All right. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you today. Saturday morning briefing for preachers and teachers. And today I'm going to take a little different tack with you. Um, I'm going to talk about bridge building. I'm going to give you something that if you will put into practice, I promise you, it will make you a far better preacher and teacher, but also a far better leader, period. And so I'm kind of relating it to bridges. Bridges don't matter until you need them. You don't even think about them until you need them. And then it's too late to call somebody and say, hey, I need a bridge. The road's been washed out, or the bridge hasn't been maintained, and so it can no longer carry a heavy load or weight. Well, in the same way, what makes us effective leaders and great communicators or effective communicators is the power of relationships. I want to talk to you today about maintaining and building, growing relationships. And you say, oh, don't turn me off just yet. I promise you that this will make a huge impact in your life. And so it's kind of like building bridges. You don't need them until you need them. And so the old axiom, let me just start with this axiom. The old axiom is not what you know, but it's who you know. Well, in a lot of ways, that is mostly true. I promise you. And as it relates to being communicators, as a preacher, a pastor, a teacher, you can be a world-class Bible scholar. You can know Greek and Hebrew, you can know hermeneutics, you can know how to build a thesis, make a thesis statement, a mission statement, a vision statement. You can have impeccable theology, great illustrations, but if you have not connected with your people, I promise you, your ability to communicate to them will be greatly and drastically impacted. Even if you're a visiting evangelist or an outside speaker, a lot of your effectiveness will be because of the people's trust and relationship with the pastor that brought you in. You're not there on your good looks. Your reputation may precede you, and they may, like they would to go to a concert or hear one of their favorite singers. You may be one of their favorite preachers, and they'll come and hear you for a while. But if you have a lasting impact, it's going to be because of somehow there was a connection, a bridge that connected with them. And so I just want you to understand, those of us that are communicators by trade, your ministry, both on Sunday and Monday through Saturday, is built on relationships. I promise you, silence is almost always interpreted negatively. When we don't interact with people, when they haven't seen us or heard from us for days and weeks and months at a time, that silence is going to be interpreted negatively almost always. They're going to think that they don't matter, that they're not important, that they're not a priority. And then, bam, you need them. Well, there's no bridge there. Or the integrity of the bridge is very weak. And so whether it's Sunday or Monday through Saturday, your ministry is built on relationships. Here's another interesting thing, and this will work in the professional world, the for-profit world, as well as the nonprofit world. But not only in your effectiveness day to day, but in your career. I promise you, there will come times, there'll be pivotal moments in your life where there'll be people in a room making a decision about you. As an overseer working in church ministries and helping my overseer at the time, I'd go to churches and there'd be people making decisions about their next pastor. And I'm telling you, very seldom was their degree or what they knew, very seldom was that the deciding factor. You would always boil down. It's amazing how people are connected. It would boil down to a relationship. And so there's going to be people making decisions about you in a room that you're not invited to be in. And if they know you, if they have a good relationship with you, that will be the game changer. And don't just think about your career like those few times in our life, maybe when we transition to a new assignment. But your effectiveness as a leader is not going to be solved or determined on Sunday behind that pulpit, but it's going to be in the hall, between services, between Sunday school, or on the way out in the parking lot, at the water cooler the next day, or around the dinner table, or at the restaurant on Sunday. Your ability to cast vision, your ability to communicate. They're going to be. You do know that you are discussed. Your sermon may be discussed. Your ability to lead, your goals and desires will be discussed. And if there's somebody in that room, if there's somebody at that water cooler, if there's somebody hanging out with the group at Denny's after church, and I don't know about Pastor. I believe he's lost his mind. Oh no, I promise you, I've talked to him. He's shared with me. I believe in him. I'm behind this man. But if you don't have a relationship, they're not going to speak up, and the victory will be lost, no matter how great your communication was, no matter how many charts and pictures of schematics and blueprints that you put up there on the screen and all of your great plans. It's going to boil down to your ability to build bridges with people, connect with them. I remember years ago, one of the best hires I ever made. I guess it's on my mind because I talked to him yesterday. I'm still maintaining that relationship. But it was a guy by the name of Jonathan Sawyer. Tremendous worship arts pastor, extraordinary. He's at a huge church in Florida now, doing a great job, and I'm so proud of him. And but anyway, I had a great ministry of music for probably the first half of my ministry at Fort Mill, and he did a fabulous job. He got a promotion. I didn't feel bad at him. I was proud of him. He went to a much larger church than we were at Fort Mill, and so the good news is he got a promotion, and I felt good about that, and I was proud for him. But the bad news is I'd lost a cleanup batter in my lineup, and so I had to replace him. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. And those of you that were at camp meeting this year here in the Dakotas, you can imagine what I was dealing with when you saw just maybe half, if that much, of the choir that was up here. What a great job they did. And so here I was trying to find someone to replace him. Well, I made one of the best hires in all my life. And it wasn't because Jonathan, I knew Jonathan. It wasn't because of how good he was or that opened the door, his reputation. I'd never heard of him. But just I think it might have even been the next day after my current worship arts pastor, his last Sunday, I had a meeting at our state headquarters there in that town. One of the state officials was retiring and moving. I can't remember what the deal was, but they had a going away party for him. And so I'm sitting there with one of my colleagues, a fellow by the name of Jerry Madden, who was a friend of mine, who I've known. He and I've known each other for years and served on boards and committees, and there's a long history there. So we had a friendship. And I said, Jerry, I guess you've heard about Kevin Thompson. We called him KT. I guess you've heard about KT leaving me, and it's going to be hard to replace him. I said, do you have any leads? We're just sitting there. I'm doing my homework, networking, trying to find somebody. He said, David, man, there's a guy out in Alabama that if I could hire him, I would. If I could figure out a way to bring him, I'd hire him right now. So, who is he? And he gave me Jonathan Sawyer's name. And so, long story short, because of a relationship that I had, it built a bridge to a fine young man that ended up being a game changer at Fort Mill and brought a lot of joy in my own life, and we remain friends to this day. And so relationships are the make it or break it in your ministry. And so I want to encourage you to focus on that and to be intentional about building relationships. Now, I'm going to give you 5 things to do. But before I do that, I want to give 2 qualifiers because what I'm sharing with you could be misapplied or misunderstood. And so I want to give you 2 qualifiers, and then I'm going to give you 5 things to do to be intentional about building bridges, building relationships. qualifier number one, I am operating under the assumption that you genuinely, truly care about people. Because you see, what I'm about to tell you can be used to manipulate people. Advertisers do this kind of stuff. They know everything we do just about. They know just about every time we wipe our nose. They use that to manipulate us, to get us to buy things and to go places and do things. So they're out there using data about us, not to build a relationship, but to basically get in our pocketbook. I am assuming, though, that you are in the ministry and that your goal is to truly add value, to serve, to find a way. It'd be great for it to be a win-win, but if nothing else, find ways for the people you serve to win. I'll never forget my dad. I'm blessed to have a dad that was in the ministry. He's retired now, but just a great man, a great leader in his day. And I remember my dad. We were at a General Assembly, and he said, "Son, I want to tell you something that's very important." He says, "In every organization, there's politics. That's the nature of organizations. In every organization." He says the difference between good politics and bad politics, because we just had a conversation of a guy that was very cynical and had said a lot of stuff that really didn't need to be said. And he said the difference between good politics and bad politics is about you. Being manipulative, being friendly because you're trying to get something out of someone. He said good politics is about them. And it can be about you and them, networking, finding a win-win. But at the end of the day, good politics is about serving others and helping them. And if good comes out of it for you, that's just extra. And I never forgot that. And that's what I'm talking about as a pastor, as a communicator. It's not just I want to be friendly to these people and connect so that I can be a better preacher and look good, or so that I can get my way, so that I can get this goal done and build this big church so that I can go to the next level. If that's what it's about, really you don't need to be in the ministry. But you probably just need to get on your knees and get right with God. But I'm assuming that you genuinely care about people, and I'm going to show you and help you to be a better, effective leader and communicator. Second qualifier is that no matter your personality type, you can do this, what I'm about to tell you. And I know some people are not social butterflies. You love people, but they drain you. And you're happier when you're off by yourself in a room studying somewhere, or, that's where you're the happiest. But again, like I said, you can spend 20 hours a week, 40 hours a week preparing a message, but you need to probably spend about the same amount of time preparing the people, interacting with them. But you can do this. I remember something that I consider him a gold standard leader and administrative bishop. I reached out to him very early when I became an administrative bishop because I wanted someone that could give me wise counsel. But I remember something that Bishop Mitch Corder told me. He said, "David," he said, I am not social, but I am relational. And I've never forgotten that. I'm not social. And that's kind of me. I can be by myself. I don't have to have a lot of people around me, but I am relational. I care about people. And so it doesn't matter. My personality type is I'm not the party animal. I'm not a big social guy. But that's okay. I can still be relational, and you can too. And so those are the two qualifiers. Now, let me just walk you through them real quick here. 5 things to do to build bridges, to build relationships, to make the bridges you've got now better, and then also thinking into the future to build wider bridges and longer bridges, so that when somebody's in the room discussing your future, whether it's at a local level or where God's setting you up for your next assignment, there will be bridges there that will connect you with others, that you have been intentional about building those bridges. 5 things to do for today and for the future. The first one is to develop a directed or intentional call list and make it a daily priority. You got to start. Begin to have your list. That this is my directed call list. I'm living a directed life. And you make it a priority each day. Probably we men, and I know I'm talking to women. I have women pastors here in the region, and of course there's women in ministry at every level. But a lot of us will be men, and we have a tendency to be attracted to doing things, to have a checklist of tasks that we want to get done every day. But I want to encourage you to make growing relationships a priority each day. I do two things. I do three things. The first three things I do every day is I have my personal devotional time. I spend time with God. And then I take care of the urgent. And back in the days before interstates, you go through, when we would go from South Carolina to Norfolk, where my mother's family was, we'd go there for Christmas or whatever, and we'd go through these little towns, just one little town after another. We'd have to poke through those little towns. Dad would call those little towns bottlenecks because it cramped the flow of traffic. Well, the flow of effectiveness, when you are leading a team or where there's people counting on you, you don't want to be a bottleneck. And so I call those the urgent things. Those are things that people are waiting on me to get done, to get back to them. And so within at least 24 hours, I try to get back to them. And so right at the top of the list, after my time with God, is I take care of all the urgent. But then when I get that out of the way, before I start on anything else, I take care of my directed call list. Not returning calls, not responding to emergencies, but I am being proactive in reaching out and building relationships. And so number one is develop a directed call list and make it a daily priority. Number two, keep the directed in the call list. Okay, call people on purpose. Have a reason to call them. Now here's the key. If you're not careful, there will be a small group of people that will monopolize your life, and they will hinder you from growing your ministry and growing yourself. And they mean well. It could be a group of people that you enjoy being around, friends, and they're constantly calling and monopolizing your time. Or it'll be those chronic squeaky wheels, and they've always got something to complain about, or they've always got an ache and a pain. And I'm not saying to ignore those people, but if you let them rob you of this window, and I spend an hour and a half to 2 hours every day on this list. It's that important to me. I've been doing it for years. And if you let them rob you of this being proactive in building relationships with people, again, you don't need a bridge till you need it. But boy, when you need it, it's too late to start building a bridge. And so when you allow a small group of people to monopolize your time, when you allow emergencies, and you'll have them every day, but those emergencies, those good friends, those fun people to be around, when you allow them to suck up all your day, it'll come back to haunt you someday, because you don't need a bridge until you need it. And then it's too late to start building a bridge. And so keep the directed in that call list. Don't let other people eat up all your time where you're being proactive. All right, number three. All right, prioritize your call list. Make your call list your bridge building, your directed call list, living a directed life, not just a responsive life, responding to emergencies. Okay, well, you make that a priority. Well, then you prioritize that call list. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 here, and I've got 8. And 1 is my family, which is at the top. And I have to be systematic. If you're not on my calendar, it's hard for me to say you're important. And so I actually have 8. Number 1 is family, and I systematically pray for my family and I call my family. But we're talking professional here. Okay, and so there's 7 categories, and I'll put these in the blog that you'll have. It'll be down below the video. But one is regularly and systematically call and contact everyone in your congregation. Now, if you're like me, and already went to a large church, it was hard at Fort Mill, but I tried to have everybody on my contacts. Some maybe just once a year. I had over 1,500 members. It was over 1,700 by the time I left, and so you can't call everybody every day or every week or even every month. But I was intentional. I lived a directed life. I didn't wait till you went to the hospital. I didn't wait till you was dying of cancer and say, "Oh, I need to go in and minister." It's too late to do it then. And so, have everybody in your church. If you've run in 100, and you call 5 people a day, 5 days a week, that's 25. Then you can call everybody in your church every month. So this is very doable. It's scalable, and so it may come a time your church grows. It's once a quarter. It's twice a year. There'll be some maybe just once a year, but you contact them. I used to send out birthday letters, and I'd write a personal birthday letter, and I'd have a bit of a form letter. Okay, but then I'd go in and I'd tweak it. I'd make it personal. I'd add personal advice and congratulations. And so I still hear about those birthday letters because they knew it was personal. It wasn't just boilerplate, the same thing I sent it out to everybody. I would personalize it. And even form letters that I would send, I'd get them in, that I'd send for maybe a general, like the contribution letters. I would write a little personal note on it. I just found ways to be intentional about connecting with people. And so regularly and systematically contact everybody in your church. Here in the regional level, pastors, you're on my directed call list twice a month. Twice a month, I try to make a contact with you in some form or fashion. All my ministers, I have 88 ministers that report to me, and those of you that are not pastors, you're on my regular call list. I'm still developing it, running it down, finding out who people are, but every day I'm calling at least 2 pastors and at least 2 ministers every day. But then I have another category, and I call these donors. And it is people that help me pay the bills. But it's also, when I talk about donors, I'm talking about people that are helping me get the job done. And as a pastor, it could be your staff, it could be nursery volunteers, it can be soloists, people that play the piano for you, make music for you. It can be donors, both within the church, outside of the church. And when you need them, and you haven't been investing in that relationship, remember, nobody works for you for free. And the number one thing they want from you is you. And when you haven't been investing in those relationships, and suddenly you're having a special event, and you're scrambling around trying to find nursery workers. Hey, there's no bridge there. Been no investment. They're burnt out. Your youth workers are burnt out. Your children's church workers are burnt out. You got this big project and you need X amount of dollars, and you're looking around trying to find those donors. You haven't been investing in their life, and you don't need a bridge until you need it. And if it's too late to build it then. And so I have a donor list. These are the big players. These are the people that make it happen for me. And I don't want them to feel like I'm just using them, that the only time I call them is when I need them. And so I invest in a relationship, and maybe once or twice a year I make the big ask. But I don't make the big ask in a vacuum. I make the big ask in the warmth of a loving relationship where I have been giving and giving and giving, and now I'll say, could you walk over the bridge over my side and help me with something? It sure makes it a lot easier when you've invested. So you have your regular list, which you just try to call all the people that you serve. You have your donor list. Then you have your influencer list. This could be, when I was a pastor, I had 2 mayors during the 20 years I was there. Both of those mayors, I was on a very good relationship with them. It can be leaders in your community, leaders at the school. It can be leaders in your denomination. It can be leaders outside of your denomination. But always be looking to find people that are influencers. And you want to learn from them, and you want to know them, because they will. It's surprising how someday they may have an influence in your life. And you don't need them until you need them. And if there's no bridge there, it's not going. Their influence is not going to matter at all. And also, when you influence an influencer, when you're adding value to their life, like I stayed in touch with my overseer in South Carolina because I love my state and I wanted my state to prosper. I didn't want just my church to prosper, but I wanted the state to prosper. And I knew that if my overseer won, we would win. If I had a burnout overseer or an overseer that maybe had got his eye off the ball and I could help him, but if I didn't have a relationship with him, he wasn't going to listen to me. And so he was an influencer. I stayed in his life. I earned the right to influence the influencer. So systematically call all your people, stay in touch with know who your donors are, the people that make it happen, and make sure they get special attention. Stay in touch with influencers, because when you influence an influencer, you're leveraging your life for a bigger impact. And then I had a category that I call my Paul, my Barnabas, or my Timothy. I'd categorize people as a Paul or a Barnabas or a Timothy. A Paul was somebody that was over me, superior to me in some way, a seasoned leader that I was in a Timothy relationship with them, a mentoring relationship with them, and I'd stay in touch with them. I wanted to sit at their feet and learn. And then there's Barnabases. These are my friends. These are my colleagues, like Paul and Barnabas. And they have the right, David, get over yourself. Get a life. Grow up. You're acting like an idiot. And they could just tell me those things. I have friends like that, those special friends that are real with me, that I can be open and vulnerable and say, look, tell me what you're thinking. But then there's those Timothys that I'm always looking at how to leverage my life. And it can be people in your church, but it can be people outside of your church. But you're leveraging your life. You're pouring. It can't be just about growing your church. You find a young minister in this region. You find somebody that's new, and you begin to pour into their life, and you begin to invest in them. And so I'd have these Timothys. I still have them to this day. And here's the irony of it. A lot of the Timothys that used to be Timothys they're in my donor list. They're pastoring great churches that I invested in. And now every once in a while, I have to call them, look, I have this special project. Could you help me? Man, they're glad to do it. They're glad to walk over the bridge and come over here to the NCR and help us. Why? Because I have built a good, strong bridge. I've invested in their life. I did it year after year after year. And you don't need a bridge until you need it. And when you need it, it's too late to start building it. And so find those Pauls that will be they'll give you one idea that forever change your life. Have those close friends, that network of friends that keep you healthy and keep you sanctified when you get a little proud, or you get over in the ditch and you're doing things that could be harmful. They say, hey, foul, get back in line. But then have those Timothys. That's where you'll have a sweet spot that will just bring so much joy to your life. It's not about you. It's not about growing your church. It's just about doing something for the kingdom. You see a winner out there, and you want to help them, and you want to invest in them. And then my last category, you take care of your people, that God's assigned to you. You make sure that they're touched. That's how your preaching will get better. And then you have the influencers, and that could be in your community, in your denomination. And then you have your donors, the people that you give special attention to that are making it happen for you, and you don't take them for granted. You care about them. And then you have your top three, and then you have your Paul, your Barnabas, and then your Timothy. And then you're always just looking around for that general call list. You maybe only call them once or twice a year, maybe every other year, but they're on this list, and you systematically work through it. Like for instance, yesterday there was this young couple that just kind of stood out to me when I was over at MIP, Ministry of Development in South Carolina, and I just noticed them, and I began to keep an eye on them, and so I kept up with them, and I had them on my list, on my prayer list, and they came up yesterday, and I just reached out and contacted them, and David Kemp is nothing, but we had some history, and I had invested into them and spoken to their life, and they got a call from me, and it brought me so much joy that it brought them joy, and it ministered to them, and I was able to again to speak into their life. There's people that once a year I call them on the anniversary of their husband or their spouse, their wife's death, or a child, or a special anniversary. I just keep up with it, and I just make a little deposit. And it just brings me joy, and it makes a blessing to them. It builds a bridge. I may never need that bridge, but there may come a day that I'll need that bridge. And you don't need a bridge until you need it, and then it's too late. And so, anyway, prioritize your call list. And then I said I'd give you 5 things. Then I've been going through it for a while. What to do: make your directed call list and make it a priority. Keep the directed in your call list. Call on purpose. And then prioritize your call list. And I gave you, and this will be in your notes, I gave you 7 things, and I'd recommend 8. Keep your family right up at the top. A good son, a good daughter makes their parents happy. Make sure you, like me, when your children grow up, stay in touch with them. Stay in touch with your grandchildren. Stay in touch with aunts and uncles and cousins. You want to influence them for the cause of Christ. And then number 4, when you call, have something to add. Make a difference. Call on purpose. Call to give. Call to learn. Call to affirm. Do your homework before you call. Go on Facebook. See what's been happening in their life. Take good notes from the last time. And so do your homework before you call. And then after you call, go back in and do your homework. If you told them they've got a special event coming up in maybe 3 weeks, well then write that down and make a note. And on that day you said you'd pray, make sure you pray. And then follow up. And man, when you start doing this with your members, this is how you build true friendship. They know that you're not just manipulating them, but you care. And so when you call, have something to add. Call on purpose. Speak into their life, validate them, add value, give them an idea, ask questions and find out where they're at. Maybe send them a book or send them a link to a podcast down the road you've listened to. Oh, hey, I heard this in light of our last conversation. This may be a help. All that is just building bridges. And then number 5, grow your call list constantly. This is your Colonel Sanders' secret recipe. This is your proprietary secret to your life, your ministry, your career, and that is your relationships. Continue to grow every one of those categories. And when you look at your category and you don't have anybody to call in that category today, think, who could I add to this? Who could I call today? And constantly be growing your call list. And so ministry is built on relationships. Before people are impressed with what you know, they want to know if you know them, if you care about them. And so what to do? As I said, what to do is make a directed call list and make it a priority. Make it something you do every day. Keep the directed in the call list. Don't let emergencies rob you and monopolize you. Prioritize that call list. Know why you're calling them. Have certain reasons that you call. And when you do call, number 4, have something to say. And then number 5, spend the rest of your life growing your call list. Let me give you, I could give you so many examples, but here's one that just kind of makes me chuckle. But there was a matter of fact, he was my boss. I was his youth pastor at Fort Mill many years ago. His name was George Alford. And Brother Alford was a missions rep, kind of like Brother Gillum is in our region now. He was a missions rep, and he would come to my dad's church and talk about missions, and we got to know him, and everybody loved George Alford. We called him Uncle George. And everybody loved him. Pivotal times in Sanjay in my life, he would speak into our life. It was a blessing, and I just, we just, he was kind of like the Apostle Paul in our family. And I remember when he passed away, Sanjay and I made a special point to go and be at his funeral. When we got there, we were blown away. There were hundreds and hundreds of people there. And they had a number of speakers, and they got up and they spoke, and we heard all these little stories that they would tell about him and their special relationship. And when before service and after service, people were talking about their special relationship they had with George Alford. And when Sanjay and I got in the car, we both, it wasn't planned. We just both kind of looked at each other, and almost the same thing came out of our mouth. We said, we thought we had a special relationship with him. We thought we were special. We were not special. He treated everybody that way. Well, the truth was, we were special, and everybody else was special. He spent a lifetime of building bridges, of speaking into people's life. And a lifetime of that, when we went to his funeral, here was a man greatly honored, greatly loved, had made a difference around the world. And it wasn't because of a big string of degrees, nothing wrong with degrees. It wasn't because he had pastored this great church or achieved these great things, but it was simply that day in and day out, just pecking along, building a bridge, connecting with people, adding value into their life. What makes your life meaningful? What makes you a great communicator, an effective leader? Is building relationships, building bridges. Remember, you don't need a bridge until you need it, and then it's too late to start building it. So there you go. There's a principle that I think will have huge impact in your life. That's today's briefing for this week. Love you folks. I hope it goes great tomorrow. Hope you have a great day and that God greatly uses you and anoints you. I'll be seeing you around the bend, and see you next time. God bless. Bye-bye.